The reason why we're actually shooting in this exact place is because it started raining about an hour ago and it still has not stopped. It's still drizzling. But I talk about the books that are on my Kindle. Having so many trees around just reminded me why having Kindle is good. A, it's wonderful for the environment, but it's also such a beautiful thing to have with you when you're traveling. It's lightweight and it houses all the books that you probably need throughout your travel. Hi everyone, welcome to Chalchitra Talks. मेरा नाम वाणी है, and in this episode I want to take you through what's on my Kindle. There are a lot of books that I keep on my Kindle, books that I like to go back to, books that I like to reread. There are essays, there are articles, there are research papers and so on, but I will take you through some of the most, I think, interesting pieces that I have. The first book that I want to be done with is Deborah Levy's Real Estate, Things I Don't Want to Know and Cost of Living. It's a 3-part autobiographical series that I've recommended every chance I've got on this channel. And this is something that I keep here, and this is something I go back to time and again. The second book is A Book of Simple Living, which again I've recommended n number of times on the channel. So I'm going to be done with these two books. There is also this essay by Tennessee Williams, which I think Vaibhav and I read on one of our streams. It's called The Catastrophe of Success, and talks about what nobody actually tells you about success. Everyone talks about getting to that level, but nobody talks about getting beyond that level. And this essay is about that. Maybe I'll just read one of my highlights for you. The sort of life that I had previous to this popular success was one that required endurance. A life of clawing and scratching along a sheer surface, and holding on tight with raw fingers to every inch of rock higher than the one caught hold of before. But it was a good life because it was the sort of life for which the human organism is created. I was not aware of how much vital energy had gone into the struggle until the struggle was removed. I was out of a level plateau, with my arms still thrashing and my lungs still grabbing at air that no longer resisted. This was security at last. He takes you through his experience with success. I lived on room service, but in this too there was a disenchantment. Sometime between the moment when I ordered dinner over the phone and when it was rolled into my living room like a corpse on a rubber-wheeled table, I lost all interest in it. And he goes on to say, I got so sick of hearing people say, I loved your play, that I could not say thank you anymore. I choked on the words and turned rudely away from the usually sincere person. I no longer felt any pride in the play itself, but began to dislike it, probably because I felt too lifeless inside ever to create another. I was walking around dead in my shoes, and I knew it, but there were no friends I knew or trusted sufficiently at that time to take them aside and tell them what was the matter. So this is one of my most favorite essays actually. And another book that I keep in my Kindle is Quiet by Susan Cain. It talks about introverts in a world that cannot stop talking. The first part talks of the extrovert ideal. The first chapter is the rise of the likable fellow, and it just takes you through how the society has built a certain norm around how a likable person should be, and 9 out of 10 times it's an extrovert. And the reason why I keep on going back to it is because sometimes it just gets very hard when you're competing with extroverts who do not get tired of being around people. The next book that I have in the book is something that was recommended to me by Vaibhav. It's called Attached, The New Science of Adult Attachment, and how it can help you find and keep love. It actually tells you that there are 3 different attachment styles in general. The anxious attached, who are always anxious and overthinking their ways in this relationship. The avoidant attachment, you get too close to them and they run away. And then there is the secure attachment style, very secure in their relationships. And this book takes you through each individual, what they are like, what triggers them, what will trigger their attachment styles, and how to deal with them. And once you read this book, you will find yourself in one of the pages. The next book that I want to talk to you about is Mossad by Michael Barzohar. It actually is a collection of stories about the missions undertaken by Mossad, about their accomplishments and so on. It's actually a collection of spy stories that you may say, but they are not. fictionalized. They are very real and they have happened in history. The next book is actually quite interesting. It's called Living, Thinking, Looking, and it's by Siri Hustvedt. It's actually a New York Times bestseller. It's basically divided into three parts: living, thinking, and looking. Living basically deals with how you live life. Thinking is about your thoughts about certain things, and looking is how you perceive things. In looking, the author takes us through a lot of artists and their works. In thinking, she takes you through the emotional struggles of people. And in living, she takes you through her musings, her search to find meaning, and so on. So there are a lot of essays in all these three sections, and I think this is a collection of one of the finest essays of our times. The next book that I actually want to recommend to you is something that I do not know why I never spoke about on the channel. It's called Civilized to Death, The Price of Progress, and it's by Christopher Ryan. As the title suggests, it actually talks about the price we pay for the progress, and he argues that a lot of us believe that our today is much better than what we had yesterday, and we'll keep on making a progress, we'll keep on progressing, there'll be new inventions, findings, and our tomorrow will definitely be much better than what it is today. But then he pitches you something in the first chapter, and he says, we are the only species that lives in zoos of our own design. Each day, we create the world we and our descendants are going to inhabit. If we want that world to be more like the San Diego Zoo than the living tombs in Pukitingi, we'll need a clearer understanding of what human life was like before our ancestors first woke up in cages. We'll need to know our species. So this book takes you through the story of pre-civilization. It talks about the price we've paid for this progress we've made. And even though a lot of people are being saved by the surgeries and by the medicinal progress and quite a few things, he still says and argues that are we actually living a life that is worth enjoying? The next book that I want to pick up is called The 5 Love Languages, The Secret to Love That Lasts. It's actually a way to deal with all your relationships. Every individual is different, and the way they like to be appreciated or loved is different. And this book suggests, with no spoilers, that there are 5 love languages. There are people who like to receive gifts. There are people who like a kind word. There are people who like touch. And there are people who like quality time, words of affirmation, acts of service, and so on. And he tells you how to deal with each individual. And every time someone whose first language is not perhaps receiving gift and you give them something, how they would react in most of those circumstances. So knowing the 5 love languages and the love language of the person you're dealing with always almost helps. And a very interesting thing that again I have in my Kindle is the shareholder letter that Jeff Bezos wrote in 2020. One of the most interesting things that I could find here was when he says, if you want to be successful in business, in life actually, you have to create more than you consume. Your goal should be to create value for everyone you interact with. Any business that does not create value for those it touches, even if it appears successful on the surface, isn't long for this world. And he goes on to talk about how they're trying to create a difference for people, their employees, the climate, and so on. So do check out this shareholder letter. I think it's one of the most interesting things, especially if you are a co-founder, if you are a leader yourself. It's about taking people together. And that reminds me of this other book that I have here. It's called The Score Will Take Care of Itself by Bill Walsh. One of my favorite descriptions from this book is when he talks about the way his team lost. And this is what he says. Allow yourself the grieving time, but then recognize that the road to recovery and victory lies in having the strength to get up off the mat and start planning your next move. This is how you must think if you want to win. Otherwise, you have lost. For me, on that flight back home after the Miami loss, it meant working 1 minute at a time, literally, to regain composure, confidence, and direction. And here he says, failure is part of success, an integral part. Everybody gets knocked down knowing it will happen, and what you must do when it comes is the first step back. And it's what got me up after being knocked down and almost out in Miami. So these are most of the books that I have on my Kindle. I hope you liked them. I hope you'll find these recommendations interesting. Do pick them up. Do let me know if you like them. And before I go, I want to tell you that if you like our work, if you like what we do support us on Patreon or become a member of our YouTube community. We've carefully divided our patrons into 3 different categories: Goodfellas, Gladiators, and Godfathers. Godfathers are at the top, and each category comes with its own perks. You get to be a part of exclusive WhatsApp groups, especially Godfathers. They get to be a part of the 5 exclusive WhatsApp groups that we have: movies, books, music, sports, science. They get invited on streams, they have access to our quizzes. They also get to be a part of the monthly town hall sessions that we host with them. So do become our patrons if you like what we do, if you want to support us, and I will be back with another recommendation for you in my next episode.